Recognized Uncle Walker D01. Recognized Blue Beetle B22.
Can you scan that case?
Yeah, sure. Cannot scan contents. Not compatible. Not compatible again? What does that even mean?
Blue, what do you mean? Who are you talking to?
It's the Scarab. The thing stuck to my spine that gives me the armor, the powers. It's an artificial intelligence created by Ted Cord. You know, the previous Blue Beetle.
Yeah, I knew him. Good man.
So I hear. Guess he was a super genius or something. Captain Adam figures the Scarab was Cord's ultimate invention. But the light killed him before he had a chance to use it. The Scarab advises me. Think Jiminy Cricket, with a really bad attitude.
Hello, team. Today in the cave, we are honored to welcome Eric Lopez. Eric's voice credits include work on Star Wars Rebels and Spectacular Spider-Man, the video games Infinite Crisis, Young Justice Legacy, and How to Train Your Dragon 2, and, of course, as Jaime Reyes as Young Justice's Blue Beetle. Eric, we are honored to welcome you to the cave. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm honored to be here.
Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that our discussion episodes draw on anything and everything related to Young Justice, including both seasons of the series so far, the comics, and the video games. If you've not seen, read, or played all the material and are spoiler-wary, consider this your warning. In this interview, we may well spoil any number of other projects that Eric has worked on or is working on, whatever he can tell us about. First reveals, we'll see. So keep that in mind. And with all that out of the way, let's dive in. So we have this usual perspective questions we ask our guest, which is, when did you first see Young Justice? And when I interviewed Jason and Crispin, of course, that didn't really apply because they were doing the show. But Cameron actually surprised me and said, actually, it did apply to him because you guys were doing season 2. So did you see Young Justice before you tried out for the part of Jaime? Like, can you tell us that story? How did that relate?
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually talking to Cameron about this after he told me about that he did the podcast, and he actually asked me about this question. I was like, well, I did. It's funny. I got this thing. There's this thing that I have. I don't know. I don't like to call it bitter or jealousy, but like when I really want a part really bad,
right,
and I don't get it, I have a tendency to kind of stay away from it for a little while before I once the heat's off it. And then,
did you try out for season 1?
I read for Aqualad, which is, there's no way I would. Yeah, there's no way I would ever even expected to get it now that I know that Kari is so awesome. You know, he's incredible as Aqualad, and I cannot see anybody else playing that.
Yeah.
But when it came down the audition pike, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? I was like, this is Young Justice. I was like, this is awesome. And it's weird that they didn't hide it. They didn't hide what it was. Usually that they're really secretive about stuff. Like maybe they weren't sure they were going to get it made right away because
for season 1, you mean? Like season 1,
yeah,
they didn't hide it, but then they gotcha.
Yeah, for the season 1 auditions, everything was just really open. I was like, Young Justice, this is a series about the young sidekicks, and they make their own team. I was like, oh, this is going to be so sweet, you know? I was like, I want this part so bad. And obviously, I didn't get it. And so I was like, kind of like, I can't bring myself to watch this show because maybe I should have, because once I would have heard Kari, I was like, oh, man, no wonder I didn't get it. But, like, there's always this thing, like I was telling Cameron, is like, I've auditioned for Batman a couple times, and then I'm like, and other stuff, and like,
right,
you just kind of like, I'm gonna sit on it. I'm gonna wait to watch it for a while before I let the sting of me not being on the project go away. Yeah, most stuff I'm like, whatever, I don't care. But like anything superhero related, because I'm a huge geek, ever since I was a little kid, I've been really big into comic books and stuff like that. So anything like DC or Marvel, I just want every part I can get in it.
Nice. So you tried out for Aqualad in Young Justice, and then you held off on watching it when I'm absolutely fascinated because Cameron told us this hilarious story about the whole Cloud Ninja thing. Did that happen with you as well?
Yeah, that happened with me as well. Yeah, I went in and I read I think it was Cloud Ninja. I'm not sure if it was Cloud, because there was Storm Ninja, Cloud Ninja. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it was Cloud Ninja, but there was and in the audition copy, it was super secret, and it gave a light rundown of the relationship between the Scarab and Jaime, but his name wasn't Jaime. He was just like Storm Ninja Storm Ninja Blue or something like that. I don't remember exactly what his name was.
Funny.
And it was like a ghost. They said it was a spirit that he interacted with or something like that. And I was like, this is pretty cool. I was like, I wouldn't mind getting this. I like ninjas. I like ninja stuff. And then when, it's weird, like, when I'm not sure if Cameron, it was the same thing for Cameron, but I'm assuming because we share the same agent. So when we went into my first session, I just my agent told me, she's like, yeah, you booked the Cloud Ninja thing. I'm like, oh, great, it's cool. She's like, this is your session date. This is you're gonna be in there from this time to this time. And so I get in there and I see Greg Weisman, who I'm like super familiar with from when I worked on Spectacular
Spider-Man, yeah.
Yeah, and Jamie Thomason, the director, also. I was like, wow. I was like, oh, cool. You guys are all back together again. Right on. What's this? What is this project? And they're like, do you know what you're reading? I'm like, no, I have no idea, man. I know I'm Storm Ninja number whatever or Blue, And he's like, this is Young Justice. I'm like, what? I almost like my heart just like sank. I was like, I was so excited, man. It was crazy. And then he showed me the artwork, and I was like, oh.
That's so amazing to me because based on that story you told me about how disappointed you were, and then on top of that, not only did you so you didn't get Aqualad, but now you got Jaime, but then on top of that, you got like a major part in season 2.
Exactly. Yeah. When I found out that the story arc was like, most of the season story arc was based around, the Reach and the Scarab and Jaime, I was like, whoa, man. I was like, all of a sudden, I'm like on one of the main characters. I'm like, this is crazy. It was exciting.
Amazing. So when you went in for the callback, you had no idea still. Like Cameron was told like, hey, by the way, you booked Robin. And he was like, wait, what? Right? Or whatever it was. Like,
no.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I didn't know anything. I went into the session not knowing I just knowing that I had booked Storm Ninja, whatever. I was like, yeah, it was crazy, man. It was nuts. And then, so then you gotta put yourself in my shoes. Like I'm there. I think I'm reading this ninja project, and then they tell me you're on the show that you've been wanting to be on so bad. And then I got to calm myself down before we start recording. So I go out and I make myself some tea. I try to center myself. I'm like, man, this is great. It's just because all the a couple of the old the old castmates from the first season were in there too. Like, and I was just like, wow, man, it's crazy. And when you go, the cool thing about Young Justice is we record ensemble.
Right. That's what I've heard. That's not usual.
Yeah, you're in there with all these names, and you're just like, what is going on? You're trying to keep your cool, Try not to joke around too, because like there's a lot of guys that are just so comfortable. They're in there all the time, like Nolan and Nolan North and all these other guys, and they're just super comfortable, and they're just rattling off jokes. And I'm like, I kind of want to be like them, but then I don't want to annoy anybody.
Right. Yeah. Right. So I've talked on the show a little bit. I think maybe Cameron and I talked about it a little bit too, this idea of the imposter syndrome that happens with, I think a lot of people when they're in whatever industry that they happen to be in, that they're really excited about being in, whether it's like a writer or, like I'm a nurse or whatever, like you're like this echo in the back of your head, this worry that, somebody's going to find out I'm not really a professional or whatever. That lie that we tell each other, that worried lie that we tell ourselves. Is that kind of what you were feeling when you were in there? Because that's got to be intimidating.
Luckily, not on this one. I mean, I felt like I was just super happy.
Nice.
To be in there. Like I felt that on Spectacular Spider-Man. That I had that because I mean, I go in there, right? I think it was my first animated show. Right. I think it was the first animated show I booked, and it was pretty close to when I got signed to the agency, which was my first agency. Like I'd just gotten into professional voiceover. I was just a professional. I just became a professional. And when I got in there, there's Phil Lamar's in there,
right?
And, Andrew Cascino and all these guys. Like I think Kevin Michael Richardson was in one of my first sessions. Yikes. And it was nuts. But John DiMaggio, I was like, there's all these huge names in there. And I was just like, I had that. Like, I just wanted to stay out of the way, read my lines as best as possible. Yeah. only speak to the cast when spoken to. Just mind myself. Yeah, I totally had that on that first project. With Young Justice, though, it's always there. Though, yeah, I think there's always a little bit of that there, which is great because I think it kind of like keeps you grounded and humble. Because if you think you're just you're awesome, then you'll probably you probably won't take well to direction.
Right.
Like
and
that,
it's probably going to take you in a place you don't want to go. Right. Well,
Exactly.
let's back this up just a little bit. We're going to revisit a little bit of this, but you hinted at this just a second ago, which is my next question, which is what was your experience with DC and with comics in general before you booked this? You said you were a big fan. So
yeah, huge fan. Yeah.
Yeah. Dive into that.
I started off reading. Well, I was, as a little kid, my dad was really cool about like taking us to the movies and see the Superman movies. I didn't get in to see like the first two. I think those are before I was born, or the first one was before I was born. The second one I think we may have seen on VHS or something.
Right.
But like he would always take us to see the Superman movies in theaters, and I was really big into the Batman show, the Adam West show, like the reruns.
Oh,
I would
yeah.
watch those all the time. And then I started buying comics when I was old enough to just walk to the store, and that was back when they were like 50 cents, man. So I could buy a ton of comics, and I was always really intimidated by comics because I always jumped into a comic. I always felt insecure because I didn't start reading it at the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the very beginning, I would just buy the comic books for the artwork, because I was wanted to be like as good as those artists. So then I used it to teach myself how to draw. I actually taught myself how to draw just from emulating the comic artists from all the comics that I would buy. And then it actually wasn't until junior high school that like I really started to like actually read them, and I started reading them. I was like, wow, these are really good stories.
Yeah.
But I was always into the I buy tons of comics. I had tons of unread comics that I would just use as an art reference. And then I pulled them out later on, started reading them, and then obviously I watched all the animated shows, like I love Super Friends. I was a huge Super Friends fan when I was a little kid, and Super Friends, anything and everything DC. And I was you're always kind of I was always into Marvel too, but I was always gravitated way more to DC than I did with Marvel.
That's kind of, I have to tell you, it's nice to hear. Like, I read everything as well, but DC has a soft spot in my heart, and a lot of people I talk to, they're like, oh, Marvel was my thing, and DC was always off to the side, and it wasn't as good, and I'm not entirely convinced they were actually reading enough DC to know whether it was good or not.
Yeah, right. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I always feel there's always that underlying feeling that DC is Coke and Marvel's Pepsi. It's kind of mean. It's kind of mean to say.
It's funny because I like Coke. I like Coke better, so that makes sense. It's a perfect
so
analogy.
do I. So do I.
That's hilarious. So you had this drive to do art, right? And then you were kind of a fan of comics. Did you let's transition into kind of where you're at now. Like Cameron was 5 when he got involved with, voice acting and doing all the stuff that he did, which is bonkers. And, Jason and Crispin have both been in it for, decades now. You've been in is it just 2 animated series now? You were in Spectacular Spider-Man and you were in Young Justice. Have you done anything else that you can talk about?
I popped up. Well, I popped up in 2 episodes of Star Wars Rebels. I was in,
Rebels, right?
Season,
exactly.
Yeah, I think it was in season 2 of Rebels. I popped up as this cadet named Oleg in when Ezra infiltrates the I don't know if it's the stormtrooper school, cadet school or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pop up really briefly in one of those episodes, and then I showed up again in season 3 as John or Jin. He was part of this rebel, this little ragtag fleet of people trying to take on the Empire.
I remember that
Iron Squadron. Yeah, so I was in there. Pretty good amount of the episode. I was probably in and out of the whole episode, so it was really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm working on I worked on the show called Spirit that just got released on Netflix, but I come in season 2. So
a Spirit. Oh, Spirit. The one isn't it the one about the horses?
Yeah, the horses.
Oh,
yeah.
I just saw that actually pop through my Netflix feed. Actually, I was my son and daughter are I think, interested in seeing that. So I wasn't sure. I'm going to have to check that out as well.
I think they'll like it. It's really good writing, really good. The scripts were great.
That's what I want to hear. So where's your transition then? Did you have a drive to become a comic artist and like move into this? Like, take us along that trail.
Well, my whole life, like I've always wanted to be an actor. You know, ever since I was a little kid, I always knew I wanted to be an actor. And so, I took drama classes in all through junior high and some of high school. And I knew I should have probably just came out here at 18, like as soon as I graduated. So, but you know, it's a big dream to follow, you know, and you hear all the negative stories.
Yeah.
And so, like I decided I was a little trigger shy, so I decided to go to college for a few years. I moved to I'm from Kingman, Arizona, and then I moved to Phoenix. So, and I went to community college there, and I'm glad I did that because coming from a small town like where I was from, I didn't have like a big, I didn't have a lot of social skills. I was pretty social, but I wasn't social for the world. I wasn't social for like big cities or anything. I was more social for I was a small town kid. So it was really valuable for me to go to college and take these classes because I took a lot of art classes because I was like, well, maybe I should not be an actor. You always doubt yourself. So I was like, maybe I should just go into art. That's what I know I'm good at. I know I can do it. I know if I work hard enough, it's a sure thing. So I took a lot of art classes and graphic design and stuff. And I actually took some 3D animation classes because I was like, I'm going to be a 3D animator. And I can write my own stories. I can animate them. I can voice them.
Right. Nice.
And then,
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I took a 3D animation class. I was like, wow, this is really hard, man. I was like, I was like, I'm just gonna move to LA. I'm like, go ahead, I'm gonna do it. So I decided, man, I started doing stand up. A lot of people at my work, I was at this work. It's the whole people at work tell me I should do stand up. It's
Right.
like that whole thing.
Right.
So I actually tried it, and I did really well. And I did one open mic at the Improv in Tempe, Arizona, and then did really good. And so like a month later, I moved out here and started doing stand-up. That's how I started. I was doing stand-up, like open mics all around town at all the big spots like the Comedy Store and the Laugh
Right.
Factory and the Ice House. And I was doing really well. I was meeting a lot of people. I got kind of burnt out on it just because it's so hard to get stage time. Like, it's funny. The hardest part about stand-up isn't so much performing in the beginning. It's just, networking and I'm very bad at asking for things. I don't like to ask people like, hey man, can you give me a spot, or can you throw me up, and I don't ever usually people trade favors. I don't ever have anything to trade. So I got kind of burnt out on it. But that's actually, it's funny, stand-up actually is what led me into doing voiceover, because I did a lot of characters and impressions and stuff in my act. And one of my stand-up buddies they were doing a stop motion animated show for this local channel called LATV. And they were doing a stop motion animated show with the little homie dolls, the little dolls that you get out of the quarter machines,
Right.
Yes. So they had a terribly low budget. So they were like looking for people who could do a lot of characters and just pay them, a little bit of money. And I was like, yeah, I just wanted to experience. Then I was just, I was having fun. I was like, cool. Yeah. I was like, I'm down to do it. And so I went in, I did a bunch of characters. They brought me into the cast, and I would read whole scripts, just tons of different characters, like a whole script by myself. So in certain sketches, it was a sketch show. So, and that introduced me to the sound engineer for that show, got me into a workshop, and the workshop was run by someone who's actually with my agency now. And our agent came in to audit one night. She listened. She heard a couple. They had us in front of the mic most of the time during the workshop, so which is great. And she heard me, and she's like, "Oh, I want to set up an audition for this guy to sign him." So I went in like a week later after the workshop ended, and they signed me. And then it was just from then on I've just been doing voiceover. Yeah, it's crazy. I used to do on-camera commercials too, but like the voiceover world is just awesome, man. I love it. I kind of want to go back to on-camera, but this is my thing. And I love voiceover. It's the best.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting an impression that the community is really supportive and welcoming, which is just a great place to be. But I have I got to back up. I got a few questions based on all the stuff you were talking about. You said the agent came in to audit. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What's that lingo?
Just to audit the class, like to just sit in and see guess listen to a lot of the people in the class, like how they read and
So an agent, sometimes when you're taking these classes, sometimes agents will come in and basically scout. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what happened with me. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of that.
Wow.
But I mean, I don't know how frequent it is or how rare it is, but
Yeah.
I was just so lucky, man. That's why I feel like, I mean, I don't know if I really believe in destiny, but the way the dominoes fell on that one, you know, to just luck up on this terrible little show. It was pretty bad. It was a terrible little show, but I was loving every second of it, just being in front of the mic and getting some experience. And that's another thing. Like it gave me experience, and it got me into that workshop, which then got me into my agency, which got me Young Justice. So it's crazy.
I think it's a great lesson for anybody who's doing some kind of creative endeavor at all. It's it's not always going to work out like that. You're not always going to get Blue Beetle. But when you're doing something that you're really, really passionate about, and you're going and you're just participating, right? Like
exactly.
Like the being in the room thing that Crispin said. Like a lot of times it's just who's in the room and are they good? Then let's keep them, right? But you have to be active in participating, right? That old thing of like opportunity doesn't come looking for you, right? But you also don't want to like overshoot, like look for if I don't get X, then I'm not successful or what.
Yeah.
No, just do the thing.
You go along for the ride. Yeah.
Yeah. Support other people in doing what they're doing. Be excited about what you're doing and actually, actively participate in what you're doing.
Yeah.
I had a couple other things that came up too. Like I grew up in a small town in Kentucky and then moved to Orange County and then went to community college in Orange County. And you and I both know what that would have been like probably for you as well. Like, it was a massive culture shock, coming from that small town and thinking like, oh, I've got kind of this social thing down enough, but no, all the rules were totally different, right? And it's like a bigger, more cosmopolitan world. So I hear you. The going to community college for me was a huge help culturally, maybe I would say, like trying to learn how to fit in this new place.
Yeah, because there's so many people. It's kind of like just moving to a city. I mean, there's people from all walks of life going to the same school, and you all want different things out of life.
Yeah,
and you just learn to coexist.
And then the other thing I was thinking of, the fact that you did like a bunch of different parts in this homies stop action thing.
Yeah,
were you literally having conversations with yourself in some of these scenes?
Yeah.
Which I cannot imagine did not feed into you playing both the Beetle and Jaime.
Yeah, it was good practice for that. It's funny. And the funny thing about it is like, I thought because, I'm like, well, this must be how voiceover is. You just read and then you do another character and read that character. I was like, but I was super relieved to find out that's not how things are recorded.
Right.
'Cause it got pretty stressful at times, so I was like, man, if this is how it is, this is crazy. But luckily it's not like that. And usually you rarely get, more than a character or two in a script. Right.
Yeah. Well, unless like you're Crispin who gets a handful of clones or whatever, has to play all the clone parts. So tell me a little bit about the experience of because again, like we just touched on, you ended up kind of falling into this and both falling into and earning this almost lead role basically in season 2. And what was that experience like going from, because the part you played in Spectacular Spider-Man was, you had multiple episodes that you were in, but he was a fairly minor character, right? Molten Man?
Yeah, he was a small character. He wasn't very deep. I mean, it was just basically your troubled teen who gambles, to try to get ahead. So it wasn't, I mean, there wasn't too much to him. It was pretty simple. But yeah, this character, it was like, it was a lot deeper. It's definitely, I still say it's like the best character I played to date. Like even now, like it's like my favorite character. I mean, and plus there was a lot of similarities there, because he grew up, in El Paso, Southwest, and I grew up in Southwest Arizona, so there was a lot of similarities there as far as that went. So I really felt this connection to the character. I still do. Like, I love this character. I feel like he's mine,
Yeah.
Even though so many people have played him, I feel like this is me. This is my character,
Well, I mean, you've played him in a couple of things, right? You've played him in the video game. You played him in, of course, the Young Justice video game, but you also played him in one of the Justice League video games as well, right?
It was the Infinite Crisis, yeah.
Yeah, Infinite Crisis game. Yeah. So there have been a couple of people, because I know there was another actor, and I don't know the name off the top of my head, who played Beetle in Brave and the Bold.
I'm not sure. I think, was it James Arnold Taylor? I'm not sure.
I'd have to go back and check.
Or it might have been Will Friedle. I'm not sure.
Honestly, as much as surprising to me, loved Brave and the Bold, I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. Yeah, you kind of own this part. I mean, not only do we get a lot of Jaime and a focus on Jaime, but we get, I mean, it's not just volume, it's depth with Jaime.
Yeah.
I love the episode where he is looking for Ty. And we're getting to see his life and his family and his neighborhood, like his community and the relationships there, and how it triggers the Beetle, right? How it triggers the Scarab, right?
That's funny you bring that up, because that always pops into my head too when I think about him as a person. That episode, the same thing pops into that episode pops into my head.
And having said that, you were a big Super Friends fan. When did you figure out that Ty Longshadow was Apache Chief?
Oh, no, I don't know, man. But when I did, I got really excited. I was like, oh, that's so cool the way they did it, too. It was just, like, basically this big energy,
I know.
This big energy thing. I was like, that's cool. That's a good way to go with it. I was like, because it was kind of absurd when they did it in Super Friends.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
a little weird that he would just grow.
It was a little strange, yeah. But all of those Runaways were echoes of those characters, Super Samurai and El Dorado, and all those really bad, like...
Yeah.
Cookie cutter things they put into Super Friends at an attempt of diversity. The reinvention of them for Young Justice, at least from my perspective, was pretty brilliant.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like that those characters, the ones the kind of flimsy ones that pop up in the old days, those ones seem to be more flexible, like for like reboots and stuff. Like it seems like you can take those characters and do so much because people aren't really tied to them as much as like a Superman or a Batman.
Right.
And like you can just really mold them into anything you need them for.
Right.
That's why I really think those second, third tier characters are really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So how much did you know specifically about Blue Beetle, though? Like when they introduced Blue Beetle into the comics, I was a big Ted Kord fan. Because apparently I'm a big fan of the like super C, D string heroes. But when they introduced Jaime, I was really worried. I'm like, okay, he's just a kid who stumbles on a thing that gives him powered armor. Like for some reason that didn't connect with me as much as like someone who chooses the path of being a hero. So when I was watching season 2 and I saw Beetle was in it, and Beetle in Batman Brave and the Bold, you get a little bit of him, but it's not great in my opinion. It's okay, but it's like not a very deep cut on Jaime. Yeah. And when I started getting into him in Young Justice, I was blown away by how much I loved this character. But I knew nothing about him from the comics.
Yeah, I was also more Blue Beetle to me was Ted Kord, like growing up always.
Yeah.
And like I loved the Blue Beetle Booster Gold team ups.
Right,
awesome.
right.
Yeah, I love those. So when they brought Jaime along, I thought maybe it was just like a little stab at diversity or something, because he's a Latino kid, and, I was like, okay. But the more I read some of the comics, I really started to like him, and I actually liked the fact that he didn't choose, the hero's path. I kind of like the fact that this thing sort of chose him, and then now he has to decide what he wants to do with it. I think that speaks to a lot. That speaks to the character's character. It's like you have this power now. What are you going to do with it? You can be good. You can be bad.
Yeah.
And the Scarab obviously is okay with being bad. It just wants to destroy and kill. I like that about the character.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think I have to eat my own words. My own thought process. Like I guess I didn't allow myself to be a better writer in my head and think like, well, what does this mean? Like I was thinking like, well, when you're just given power, that's one thing. But if you but then again, I was just talking to, or not just talking to, we just aired an episode interviewing a friend of the show, Jeff Stormer, who was talking about Superman. And it's a very similar thing. Like Superman he was given these powers, and because he has these powers, he chooses to do good because it's the right thing to do, not because he's forced to do it. And I think that's really a good echo of Jaime as well. Like, he has a lot of power, that kid.
Yeah. that's the hardest part. It seems about the hardest thing about being a superhero is the choice. Is like you have to the choices that you make. You know what I mean? Like it's just, yeah, exactly like Superman. Like I mean, it's so easy to think about like in a situation where you're getting where you're getting like bullied or you're getting taken advantage of, to be like, oh, I wish I had superpowers right now so I could do this, and that's not what they do. They choose not to do that. So as a human being, to
well,
seems
getting
like
back to
you have to make.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm saying it's the choices that you make are a huge part of being super. Being a superhero.
Right.
That's what makes you a hero. You're super no matter what. But are you a superhero or are you a supervillain?
Right. And echoing back to that episode we were just talking about with Ty's mother's boyfriend. So I was going to say stepdad, but it wasn't his stepdad. It was. I don't think they were married. And Mr. Baudouin, or whatever his name was, and Robert Beltran, which was fantastic. He did such a great job. Yeah,
that's another little side story. Getting to record with him, I was huge. He was in that the Chuck Norris movie. Was it Lone Wolf McQuaid or whatever?
Oh, okay.
Is that what it was called? Remember that?
Yeah.
He was in that, and I remember I really liked him in that. And I was like, when I saw him and I got to work with him, I was super excited. I was like, it was funny. I was kind of like, I don't think he realized that I knew who he was. Like he was just like, And I was like, I know who you are, dude. And I told him, I was like, I'm a big fan of that movie. It's really cool to record with you.
That's awesome. But like, how many times? Like Jaime knows that this guy is abusive to not just Ty, but Ty's mom. And like, and there just seems to be no redeemable qualities about that guy. Like, as good as a human being as someone may think they are, that's certainly going to cross your mind. Like, would the world be better without this person in it? And particularly when you've got a Beetle in your head telling you, plasma cannon, let's do this.
Yeah. But I also think that it's that whole thing too. If you cross that line once, I mean, that line gets blurred a lot, and then you can't really start letting yourself cross that line, because then it just becomes easy.
Yeah. Exactly. So did you draw anything from any of the comics at all into the part when you were playing Jaime, or did you allow it to just be what was on the page?
Yeah, I just kind of like I just read the scripts over and over again and tried to take from it what I could from there. And just that's the good thing about Brandon and Greg and them, is that they inject so much heart and so much soul into all their characters that it's really easy to find. So I didn't have to do much digging to find, the heart and soul of the character, because it was in the script, it was in the pages. So, but I did read a lot. And, when I was reading the Blue Beetle comics, while I was reading them while we were recording, like, in the off days when we record during the time period we were recording Young Justice, season Invasion, I found a lot of similarities, in just the soul of the character. There was the feel that I would get when I would read the books was the same feel that I would get when I'd read the script. So I didn't really have to, try to make a choice there. It was already there. It was really cool.
Right. Well, we have a bunch of questions from both our own staff and friends of the show and Patreon backers. So let's dive into those a little bit.
Cool.
Some of them you've kind of touched on a little bit. The first one was actually from one of the patrons of the YJ Wiki. And they asked, when you took the role, did you ever expect he was going to play such a major role in season 2? Did they tell you, to dive into that a little bit more, did they tell you ahead of time when you got the part, like, oh, by the way, like the whole story arc is based on you? Or did some of this unfold as you went along?
It did. It unfolded as we went along. Luckily, they didn't lay all that weight on my shoulders right away.
Okay.
They kind of just, we would just go episode per episode, and I don't think they really gave us, we were kind of on pins and needles ourselves, just episode to episode. I don't think really told us where it's going. We just sort of got our script and we read it, and that we kind of got the story as we went along. So I didn't really know how heavily everything was weighing upon Jaime and the Scarab, until later on as we went on. And as it was good, because I was already in the rhythm of things when I found out. So the more and more I found out, I got very excited. I was like, wow. I was like, I'm in this whole season. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And you know what? It was great too, is that I got a lot of negative feedback about the character, the Jaime Blue Beetle character before they even knew that he was going to be fans knew he was going to be in the show. Like, you hear a lot of bad stuff, like people, oh, this character sucks or whatever. And I'm like, man, they're gonna change their mind after this next season. I was like, this is because like I said, yeah, they went so deep with the character.
Yeah,
there's no way you couldn't like him. I mean,
where did this negative stuff come from? You were just talking about like other comic readers and people just chatting about the comics kind of a thing.
Yeah, I go to this comic shop in Studio City, and like I was kind of like probing a little bit, like, oh, what do you think of Blue Beetle? The new one, Jaime Reyes. Like, man, that character's kind of stupid. They keep trying to make that thing happen. It's not gonna happen. That character, nobody cares. I'm like, it kind of bugged me a little bit, but then I'm like, all right, we'll see after the season comes out.
Wow, I would think that would be a little deflating, or maybe inspiring. Like, I don't know.
It was, a little bit of both. I think it was more inspiring than anything because, like, I like the character so much, and I believe in him. So I knew he would take, and I think there's a lot more Blue Beetle fans now after that season, and with the new Teen Titan movies also. Right,
because he's heavily in that as well. We talk a lot on the show about the actual diversity of Young Justice, period. So whether it's a variety of racially diverse characters or just such a strong female presence, particularly in season 2 with strong female characters as well. Yeah. Have you gotten a lot of any feedback about the character and how, like, culturally it maybe hopefully inspires people, or like is representing itself appropriately? Like, what kind of feedback have you gotten about that? Any?
I did. I've done a few panels at some comic conventions, and a lot of the Latino fans, a lot of the Mexican American fans, Latino kids, they love him. They love the character. Like, man, like your portrayal of Jaime and Blue Beetle is just, they're like, it's the best, man. We love it. You really did it justice. And then it's funny, when I started speaking to the fans at these conventions, it totally hit me that, like, I'm like, man, I was like carrying that weight on me the whole time and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, if I would have known just how much the fans were going to be scrutinizing this character, or judging it, either way, good or bad, it probably would have gotten my head a little bit. And luckily I didn't even think about that. And I just did my thing, and a lot of people, I get a lot of great feedback. And that makes me feel really good, man. Cause I mean, I think there is a lack, there has been, not so much anymore. They're getting better about it, but there has been a lack of diversity, in as far as these big comic characters go. And that's what I love about. That's why I said, like, so I love about these second tier, characters, is that they're so flexible, and you can plug in, change their diversity or whatever. Like what they're doing with Vibe on the Flash is awesome. Like, it's just nobody's and nobody really. You don't need to mention the fact. You don't need to push it in everybody's face. Like, oh, this character just happens to be Latino, or this character happens to be Asian. You just make it. Like, you just make a great human story.
Yep.
For someone who just happens to be a Latino kid or an Asian kid or black kid, whatever, and they just happen to be this background, but they have a great human story, and I think that's the most important thing, is the story, the human story, because anybody can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our next question was a question about all the scenes that you did with Impulse. So Jaime's got a lot of scenes with Bart Allen, and the question was, what was it like working with Jason Marsden and that friendship? Dive into that friendship between the two characters and how you felt about that.
It was great, man. It was awesome. I loved working with Jason. I was also another one that walked in, and I was a little like, oh wow, I get to work with this dude, like, because I was familiar with him from all the stuff that he'd done previously, and like I was a big fan of there was that TV movie about the Adam West Batman and Burt Ward, and he played Burt Ward. So,
nice.
So I was like really excited, and he was just a really nice guy, man, just real down to earth, really nice guy. And recording with him was a lot of fun, because like he really owned that part. Like, he was Impulse, man. Like, I don't really see anybody else playing Impulse but that guy. He was awesome. He was fun. Yeah, good. We would talk. We'd because in between takes, we'd sit there and we'd chat, because they put us right next to each other, just because we had a lot of dialogue, and he's just a great dude, man. Really cool.
Yeah. And the friendship, somehow you guys managed to pull off, like, like a really good like supportive chemistry, right, between the two characters.
Yeah, and I think that's due to him just like being such a kind person. You know, like he would always come in, we'd always say hi, we'd have a little chat, you know, about what we've been up to. Kind of, you know, we're really friendly. So when we're getting into the dialogue and we were recording, it had that natural feel to it because he was a really nice guy, and like, you know, we didn't like hang out outside the studio, but I mean, he just inside, he's just inside the studio, and like to be working with the guy, he's so kind, you know, he's such a polite person, he's funny, you know, so
Yeah.
He actually injected a lot of himself into that character because he's just so good, you know. He's so quick, he's witty, you know. So like, I don't know if he ad-libbed a lot. I don't know if he did, but he plugged in a lot of character. There's a lot of stuff in there that wasn't in the script that he would just plug in,
right.
And it just worked. I mean, it was him. He owned that, man. He was awesome. Yeah, no, it was fun, and it made it easy. Like I said, like it made it easy to pull off that friendship because we were really friendly off mic too. It was really cool.
You know, I have to back up a little bit because I just realized this next question triggered a memory here. So you got the part of Jaime or Cloud Ninja Blue or whatever it was, and
Yeah.
and they told you that. Had you watched the first season by the time you got that news, or did you have to go back and binge it?
Yeah, no, I had started watching it already. Yeah, I think it was a few episodes in, and
Okay.
I was so excited. And when I found out I got it because, I mean, the artwork too in the show, like Phil Barrasa's artwork is awesome, man. I love the look of the show, all the just the quality of acting in it too. They bring in some really high caliber people, you know, like it's that realistic type of acting, you know, that you would get in like video games and stuff. So I was super excited, man, when I got it. Yeah, I would already, especially after seeing the first few episodes. Yeah, I was already into the few.
That's so funny. So you were literally in the middle of watching season 1 when you found out you got the part for the show.
Yeah,
in season 2.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. I was like, oh my gosh.
That's so funny. So the next question was actually, what are some of your favorite moments from the show? Either scenes that you did with other people, something about Jaime, but you know, since you've now, I assume, watched everything through.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite scenes that you pulled out? We talked about that one episode where he's trying to find Ty.
Yeah. I always go back to the episode where Impulse is basically seeing the future and what Jaime becomes. Like he's that big hulked out like Blue Beetle, like evil Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
And that was like one of my favorite. That was like one of my favorite things about the show too. Was like that part, like where he had to struggle with where he was going to go. Like when he was playing the crowd too, like he was playing to the crowd. Like when he gave full power to the Scarab.
Yep. Oh
yeah.
God.
Like and the Scarab was pretending to be like this charming version of the Blue Beetle, you know, when he was really the real one was just being suppressed.
Well, so that's actually another question I have for you because when Green like goes in, you like Jaime gives him permission to go in and try and quote unquote fix the Beetle, right, or Scarab, but he puts it back on mode and suppresses Jaime.
Yeah.
Did you know? Because like it's the end of an episode where Jaime just says, "I'm free," and then like we don't find out. I don't think we find out for like a few episodes later that Jaime is not actually in there, like, or he's in there, but he's not actually controlling things. Did you know?
No, yeah, I didn't know. No, I was just. I mean, you get with the Greg would come in and basically give a rundown before we would record. It's like, okay, this is basically what's happening here. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, now I know how to read it, you know.
Right. But it was as much of a surprise to you until you read it in the script.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd get our script maybe a few days before, and then you know it's still kind of hazy because like you're like, okay, well, where are they going with this? And then we get the rundown before we record, and then you're like, oh, okay, all right,
Gotcha.
And it kind of hurt. Like I'm like, oh, I don't want him to go that way, but and that's what made it so good. Is like I love when they do stuff like that, like when they challenge a character's resolve, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what are you gonna do, man?
Yeah. The next question had to do with the Scarab a little bit. So how did you change your voice, or what did you do with your psychology, kind of behind doing the voice of the Scarab versus Jaime? Because it's actually, I had to watch it. I've watched it an absurd number of times, clearly, to have this podcast. But it took me a while before I realized, oh, wait a minute. Of course, it's the same actor because it's going to be translating its language into Jaime's head as Jaime's voice. That makes perfect sense to me. But you did a good job of making it sound like Jaime, but not quite. So how did you approach that?
It's funny enough, it came from the audition read. I think they really liked the I did the voice, and there was because it was supposed to be like some it was a demon. I think it was a voice in the cloaked, secret audition.
Yeah,
I think it was a demon speaking to the ninja. So I sort of did that kind of demon voice, and then they said, okay, so they basically just bring it up a little bit, make it sort of like his voice, and just do the same thing you did. So that's what I did with it. Yeah, that's where and it made sense because I was like, okay, yeah, if it is his voice in his head,
right,
coming through to scare, it would just be like more sinister. Let's just sound a little bit more alien, I guess. So.
Did you because the idea that Jaime is so, God, I just feel for that kid, but like his. I don't want to say that. What's the right word? Like, it's not like he's an upbeat kid like Impulse, but he's full of hope. Like, the kid's trying to do the right thing the whole time. And so he's got like such a positive kind of psychology. Like, he knows what's the right thing to do. And it's probably being even emphasized, that goodness in him is being emphasized by how violent, the scarab potentially is, right? It kind of almost keeps him. It's like, I have to go to this far end of the balance beam, to keep this thing balanced, or we're going to have a problem. But clearly the scarab is way off to the other end. Did you flip how you were thinking about it in your head around at all? Or was it just kind of like, no, I think I've got these mechanics of the voice down?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely, I think when I would do the scarab voice, I would definitely try to flip my mind into thinking, just wanting to kill something, kill someone, like that, almost like a machine, like just a machine that's programmed to do that. Like it's not gonna feel any remorse,
right? No empathy, no nothing. Yeah,
exactly. So I think that's mostly what I would feel, the mindset I'd get my head into when I would record that voice.
Nice. All right, and then our last question, which we always save the most important questions for last, so prepare yourself. Okay. Which one of Blue's robot construct weapons are your favorite?
Probably the blaster cannon, man. That's the one I always see in my head when I think about him, forming anything, is the blaster cannon.
I always have a hard time not picturing that giant stapler gun that where he pins people to the walls and stuff. I'm like, what is that
was kind of weird, right? I thought that was kind of weird. I saw it too, but it worked.
It does. It is certainly effective.
Blaster cannon's definitely my favorite, though.
Nice. You're a straightforward kind of guy. I hear you. Well, thanks so much, Eric, for spending some time with us in the cave. Where can people find you out and about, either on social media or whatnot, if they want to get a hold of you?
I mostly post on, I'm on Twitter as I am Eric Lopez. Mm-hmm. I rarely tweet, I don't really tweet, so whatever tweets come through are just basically dual, what do you call it? Simultaneous tweets from my Instagram, which is real Eric Lopez. Mm-hmm. And that's where I post a lot of my artwork.
Yeah, I saw you've got some artwork up there too. Are you doing actual work, doing artwork work at all? Are you looking to do some work on the side, or is this just something right now that's kind of a hobby to the side because your voice work is picking up so much?
Yeah, it's I just do it as a hobby. It's kind of it's just like a little passion of mine. I can't not be sketching or drawing. Anytime I'm bored, I always have a sketch pad with me. Mm-hmm. So it's just been like my thing my whole life. I've been drawing my whole life. So it's always just, it's kind of like most people read a book or a magazine when they're bored, and I just sketch. Yeah. So, and it's just fun for me. And plus it's like I'm just challenging myself to try to be just a better illustrator or artist. I haven't done anything professionally with it. Mm-hmm. I've done a few commissions here and there, but I am trying to develop my own animated project. So I sketch a lot of because I write a lot, and I sketch out my characters. I do my own little character design, but I've only done it for myself. So, so there's that, but mostly it's just a big hobby,
Yeah. Well, hold on. We're not going to breeze past that. So you said you're doing some writing now too? So are you?
Yeah,
you
I do a little.
do a little writing and doing a little animation and do a little voice work. I'm sensing
Yeah.
I'm sensing a a project.
I want to. I have a few good ideas that I think are pretty solid. I just got to flesh them out. I'm sketching out some characters right now, and I'm not a good script writer, but I write stories.
Right.
So I would definitely I got to get with some of my script writing buddies to help me flesh out a script. But yeah, I mean, I definitely do want to get my own animated project off the ground. I think it would be super cool and interesting to be on that side of it.
Yeah, yeah.
As well as behind the mic.
Yeah, of course. I would imagine that. Are there any particular? So I'm not much of an artist myself. So I took a look at your art, and I liked there was a variety of really interesting stuff, and some of it echoed back to some of the old, like you were talking about, like magazines when you and I were kids. So like Mad magazines. And,
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Seemed like some of that in there. Is there particular artists or like what comics did you draw your inspiration from for your art? And are there any artists now that you particularly draw inspiration from, or are you just trying to work on your own style?
Oh yeah, I definitely have my favorites. Right now, when I was a kid, I really didn't know a lot of artist names. I just knew,
Yeah.
I know Jerry Ordway was really good. Yeah, I knew there's a lot of but I do now. I got tons of people I look up to. Like obviously Jim Lee's my favorite artist of all time. That's who I try to emulate if I can. And Greg Capullo's right up there, right, not even second, like just right neck and neck with him. He's awesome. Our obviously J. Scott Campbell, who's a really nice guy and actually took a look at my sketchbook at one of the cons and gave me some tips. He's really cool. Let's see who else is really good that I really like. Oh, Philip Tan is awesome. Who also has a style like Jim Lee. He's really good. There's so many, man. There's so many good artists out there, and that's what I love about Instagram too. Is like,
Yeah.
I'm being introduced to so many new artists that I really wasn't familiar with. Because there's artists out there that do comic art that aren't necessarily comic book artists. They're just like, they just do commissions and they may do covers every so often. But like, yeah, there's just so many artists. There's so many good styles out there. It's a good way. I mean, my art's grown so much just from when I started my Instagram and I started browsing around.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you take a little piece of everybody and you sort of try to work it into your own work.
Yeah. Well, I would think now you would have a lot more contacts, and I know you said that you're not like selling yourself or pitching yourself is not really a thing that you're strong with. Has that changed since you were younger now, or?
I think so. Yeah, I think I'm definitely more confident now, and I think definitely have more of a sense of worth. As far as like not selling myself short.
Yeah, I hope so.
To pricing stuff or.
Yeah, because I would think that your contacts right now, like now within the industry, like knowing Greg and Brandon and the other voice talent that's on the show, like I would think that drawing on what they do and their experience and your contact with them to be able to do a project would be super cool.
Oh, I know. That would be so. I mean, that would be awesome to have those guys working on a project that I produced. That would be really cool. But I mean, I think it's still a ways off because everything's still in the early stages.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, if I could get something off the ground and get any of those guys involved, that would be incredible.
Well, if there's anything that we can do here on the podcast to boost signals for stuff that you're doing or projects or whatever, please just let us know. We would love to help out.
Cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thanks to everyone else for sharing some time with us in the cave. You can find us on Twitter at the YJ Files, on Facebook at facebook.com/crashingthemode, and on our website, www.crashingthemode.com. If you want more Young Justice, the fastest way to get it is to buy YJ Comics on Comixology, and encourage everyone you know to do so as well. Buying the comics digitally shows DC that you want more of the thing that you love. If you enjoy our show, please consider sharing it with a friend. Of course, you can also support the show by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. The ratings really do help others find the show. If you'd like to support the show and getting more reviews, discussions, interviews, and so much more, please consider linking over to patreon.com/crashingthemode and pledging a few dollars a month. As thank you, we're offering access to our episode outlines, Young Justice-inspired role-playing game adventures, in-depth articles on subjects we've only touched on the show, a free copy of the Masks role-playing game from Magpie Games, and more, including the opportunity to play in a quarterly superhero-inspired role-playing game session run by us. And even though Season 3 has been officially announced, please continue to spread the word to friends and family about the series and get yourself up to speed for this Season 3 premiere. And as always,
stay whelmed, everyone.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our hosts are Rich Howard and Emily Booza. Our editor and producer is Neil Powell. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.